This RealAg Radio podcast is brought to you by Brett Young. Change the game with BY7204LL, Brett Young's newest canola hybrid with Liberty Link technology.
It's time for RealAg Radio on Rural Radio Channel 147 on Sirius XM. RealAg Radio and RealAgriculture.com is your home for insight and analysis of the issues that are impacting your farm business. Let's get real and get connected with RealAg Radio. Welcome to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM. Shaun Haney, your host here on this Monday edition of the show. Thanks so much for making RealAg Radio and Rural Radio 147 a big part of your workday. And also a shout out to everybody listening out there on the RealAg Radio podcast. The audience continues to expand, so continue to tell your friends, your family, your neighbors, anybody that's interested in agriculture across Canada and the U.S. The audience continues to grow. Well, here on Mondays, what we typically do is talk about agronomics, and we'll do that as well today. We'll be joined from front to back by Peter P. Johnson. We got a lot to cover on today's program. I got the show list, and we're going to talk about fall weed control. We're going to talk about peanuts and breakdowns on his farm. We'll hear about that, of course. We're going to talk about soil pH because that's the topic on tonight's Agronomists. That's going to be a great show. That is a fantastic lineup. She's got 3 experts on tonight's show, 8 o'clock Eastern, 6 o'clock Mountain. You can find it on the Real Agriculture YouTube channel. Make sure you like and you hit the heart and you become a fan and subscriber, whatever that is. Anyway, we want to see you on the Agronomics side. You can also get CCA CU credits as well for watching that program. Pete and I are also going to talk about a couple emails, one coming in from Quebec and one coming in from South Africa. How about that? And some pretty big optimism when it comes to soybean yields in both Ontario and Manitoba here in 2024. Now, if you have any feedback on today's program, we'd love to hear from you. You can send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. You can also find Real Agriculture across all of the social media channels. As well, you can call the RealAg feedback line. That number is 855-776-6147. That's 855-776-6147. Let's take a break. And when we come back, we got Peter P. Johnson. He's our guest on today's program. We'll do that when we come back. You're listening to RealAg Radio, Rural Radio 147.
Get ready for tillage season with the high-speed disc from Brandt. Cut and size residue, create ideal seed beds, and level ruts faster than any other tillage machine. It's a better field finish and fewer passes, so you can stay on schedule no matter what fall throws at you. And right now, you can get yours with a $12,000 rebate. There's never been a better time to bring your operation up to speed. Visit Brandt.ca for details.
Joined right now by the Director of Agronomy with Nutrient, Dr. Carl Wyatt. As farmers wrap up harvest, what should they be thinking about for that 25 season?
Checking the bank account, and I don't just mean the financial bank account, really looking at what's in the soil, especially if your crop overperformed or underperformed. Taking that soil test, checking the soil checking account can really give you some key insights on what nutrients you need to invest in next year.
What's the science of doing that test as close to the freeze up as possible?
So the phosphate's not going to move a whole lot on you from fall to spring. So getting a fall soil sample and seeing, hey, do my soils need phosphate? That's the number one reason to justify the use of a starter fertilizer. You can get that information now. So then you can use those winter months saying, well, what is the best starter fertilizer for me? Is it just a formulation with phosphate in it? Or is my soil sample telling me I need other things? You can go to your ag retailer and match the need for the starter fertilizer with a specific formulation that matches your soil sample.
And welcome back to RealAg Radio here on this Monday. Hey, MMP reminds you that the initial deadline to submit your 2023 Agri-Stability Form without penalty is September 30th. 7 days away. We are a week out from that deadline. Do not miss on this. Visit mmp.ca today to connect with an agriculture risk management advisor to help you get that done. I know I need help with paperwork all the time. I hate filling it out, even if there is a deadline. Like, I am procrastination central on this kind of stuff. Check out mnp.ca to assist you in getting that done before we're talking a week, end of September here. It's coming up fast. Joining us is Pete Johnson. Hey, Pete, how's it going?
Going awesome. Thanks, Shaun. I am an Aiken guy today because the weekend was hard at soybean harvest, wheat planting. I'm just not used to working long hours, 4 days in a row, and all sorts of contortions that I had to go through trying to fix stuff. Yeah, but I'm great because we made some progress on harvest. We got a little bit of wheat planted. Things are going well and typically fairly on the early side for southwestern Ontario. That's a good thing.
Yeah. Well, you can see behind me, the sun's out in Lethbridge, Alberta. We're going to have a beautiful week this week, but then it kind of turns gross on the weekend. So we've had more moisture as of late, it seems, and we had, for sure in July.
So that's all good. You're recharging your moisture reserves, right? The subsoil moisture, hopefully. Here most of Ontario caught some moisture last night. We actually finished soybeans about 20 minutes before it started to rain.
Oh, that's nice.
So,
good timing.
Last night. So thanks to huge thanks. Shout out to my son Jeremy for helping me on the weekend driving combine and making it so we actually got something accomplished.
Nice. I heard you had some breakdowns.
Oh, Lord help us. Shaun, why is it nothing ever breaks down in the shop? And it's just all little stuff that you wouldn't expect. For some reason, on the drill, one of the lift cylinder pins, when I lifted, it never caught before, but it caught one of the tubes and managed to tear 3 tubes off the drill. And then, you're trying to figure out, number one, why did that happen? Anyway, so yes, I spent. Until yesterday afternoon, I never made a full drill fill without fixing something at least once, sometimes as much as 5 times, and all just stupid little stuff. The other thing, Shaun, is, for a guy who's been around as long as I have, you would think that I would know some things. And sometimes I'm not very smart. So
what did you do?
I went to the field with the drill full of fertilizer and full of seed, and everything was working well. The seed was going in the ground, and I have Cedar Force on the drill, courtesy of Precision Planting, Middlesex Soil and Crop. We use that drill for the plots, so it's really nice drill to use. And as I'm drilling along, I'm watching, and gosh, now it's not seeding deep enough, and it's getting worse and worse, and I'm scratching my head. I put Cedar Force up to heavy instead of standard, and still the problem exists. And I call the Cedar Force people, and we're trying to work through, what is the problem? And finally Cameron said, well, are you lifting the drill out of the ground, Pete? Are you just getting too light? And it just, the knowledge, the vision of knowledge just springs to my head. Oh my gosh, the soil is dry. It's hard. I had a conversation with Russ from Pioneer that morning. He has clients in my area that couldn't get the 750 John Deere drill in the ground at all, even fully loaded. They quit seeding wheat till they got some moisture because they could only get it in a half an inch. Yeah, up to the shop we go. We fill all the tanks because I have liquid fertilizer tanks on the drill, all the fertilizer tanks with water. We go back to the field, and yes, sure enough, we can get it back in the ground. So yesterday I was running only half fills. I was keeping both seed and fertilizer topped up because if I let them get much more than half empty, I just couldn't get that seed in the ground. And it's just man, I should have thought of that. I should have known that was going on. But when you go to the field and it's working, and then it just starts what's going on, baby? Yeah, not very smart on my part, man.
You know what? That happens in farming. That happens in trying to figure out why the TV doesn't work. So many things where you just got to kind of okay, stop, pause. Okay, what is going on here? Because this doesn't make any sense. But some of those obvious things can be out of sight, out of mind when we're in a kind of a stressful and busy time like harvest.
Oh yeah, so I mean, I was hauling wagons at the same, and drilling and hauling wagons. I was just going pretty fast, and I guess my brain wasn't working very well, Sean. Just the way it works.
Well, when you're crawling underneath equipment, how do your old bones take that?
I am sore today, thank you very much. I I am not used to lying on my back, working over my head for, an hour at a time, trying to fix linkages, and it just didn't seem to stop all weekend long. And similar with the combine, just stupid little stuff. A battery went. How would you know a battery's going to go? So then it wouldn't start, and you're trying to figure out why that is. And yeah, anyway, just a bunch of stuff like that. I mean, we managed to make it work, and it's all good. But yes, Pete is not the I don't know what 40-year-old that Sean is these days. Physically fit, able to give it for weeks at a time, no problem.
Mm.
He gives it for 3 or 4 days, man, and he's ready for a break. He is a hurting unit.
I think you're doing pretty good, all things considered. Hey, what are the big issues in Ontario? We've been talking about this for a couple weeks now, but tar spot has definitely shown its ugly face.
So Sean, it's really interesting to me because the epicenter, southwestern Ontario, that Rodney area, and even Chatham, Kent, they've really dealt with tar spot since about 2021, and it's just they just understand it. But I talked to an agronomist in the Niagara Peninsula this morning, and he says all of a sudden they haven't seen it to speak of, and this year it's just like an explosion.
Yeah.
And all the corn crops have just died right off with it. Similarly, I get to the Mitchell area. We hadn't seen it much up in Perth County, Central Huron, hadn't been an issue. Even north of London where I farm, we just never really seen it explode. In the last 2 weeks, Sean, I can't believe I drive past silage corn fields where they've gotten part of the field off, and the field looks black.
Ooh.
Because it's just so much tar spot. I even had an email from an agronomist who lives in the city of Woodstock, and he said he and his wife, they'd like to spend a nice evening in their backyard, and they'd gone out to their backyard and for the last, I don't know, week or 10 days, and they'd say, somebody must have cut hay. Man, that smells like fresh cut hay. And they finally figured out it was the cornfield right behind their house, and all the leaves are dying from tar spot to the point that it smelled like fresh cut hay for the last 10 days.
That's not good.
And, yeah, well, all we can do is really hope that the corn is mature enough that we're not going to take a big yield hit. But in the areas like the Niagara Peninsula where they haven't done a lot of spraying for tar spot, even when we go north of London, most corn gets sprayed, but there are growers that don't spray. If it's a tar spot year, so much more of southwestern Ontario, even up into midwestern Ontario, man, we are just going to have to spray for tar spot full stop, because it is just kicking the daylights out of corn.
What does it mean for your hybrid selection for 25? Like what do we do? Because this year's problems are not next year's. At least it's no guarantee of that. They could be, but how does what we've seen this year in some of these areas like you've described, what does it mean for what we got to do with our hybrid selection?
So I think two things. And it's really interesting you asked that question, because I was at a tour at Black Creek Research, and they have a resistant hybrid and a susceptible hybrid of corn, and then they have different fungicides applied. And the resistant hybrid sprayed with the best fungicide was super clean. But the problem that they have is that the susceptible hybrid, and so often it works this way, the susceptible hybrid is the hybrid. There was a whole bunch of agronomists there, and Greg Wilson, the owner of Black Creek, said, why would you even grow this hybrid? It's so susceptible. And one of the agronomists, my good friend Al, pulls out his phone and has a yield map from last year with that susceptible hybrid versus a resistant hybrid. And the susceptible hybrid was like 25 bushel more yield, higher yield. It's got way higher yield potential, but it's highly susceptible. So how do we balance that? And so absolutely, you're right. we need that genetic resistance, and we need the good fungicides, and we just have to put that package together, because neither one by themselves are really enough. Right. And so we have to have that 1-2 punch. And the challenge is that a lot of growers, we have not paid enough attention, and we don't have any more than enough data on hybrid sensitivity to tar spot. They're just the companies are really starting to rate now, and so we are getting some of that. Albert Tenuta has a trial, but he can't have every corn hybrid in that trial. And oftentimes, unfortunately, the highly resistant hybrids just do not pack the same yield punch. And so we need to get that resistance into the really high yielding hybrids and kind of put both of those things together. It's pretty typical just of new diseases. When they first come in, we often see that.
Yeah. We've seen it. Well, we see in wheat with fusarium, right? That's just the way it is. And if you talk to any wheat, you talk to any breeder, and they'll tell you it's get something but take something away. There's a give and take relationship with some of the characteristics, and they try to minimize that as much as possible, as much as they can. They strive to close those gaps, and then the farmer has to kind of make a decision. And that's why you see a lot of times, this is an example, why multiple hybrids, multiple varieties. A lot of times we talk about that from a days to maturity or heat units aspect, but it also has to do with disease resistance when it comes to, what could be the big problem next year, what has been the problem, and what am I trying to defend against, but not putting all my eggs in one basket, so to speak.
Right, exactly. And so when we first got tar spot in 21, I think it was 21, and we were all kind of saying, watch out. And well, man, in 2022, it was super dry, low humidity. Tar spot needs humidity, 7 hours of leaf wetness for infection. Well, if you went with the resistant hybrid that had lower yield potential, and then you don't get the disease, you just go, man, I left so much yield on the table.
Yes.
And when you are planting that hybrid, you cannot predict if it's going to be a tar spot year or a jib year or a northern corn leaf blight year, or in soybeans, a white mold year.
Canola scarlatina, wheat, fusarium, name the disease.
Right. So maybe balancing your risk and then managing once you know if it's a tar spot year. Because all of this, we can sit here and say, man, tar spot, we got to spray next year. We got to use those resistant hybrids. Well, it was a heavy pressure year, extreme pressure this year with all the humidity, all the rainfall we had. Next year, if it comes in low humidity, dry weather, it just won't be the same problem.
Okay, we got to take a break. We've got more coming up here on RealAg Radio and Agronomic Monday. But first, I want to tell you about the best answer for agronomically effective dual nitrogen protection. It is Super U Premium Fertilizer from Koch Agronomic Services. To learn how this ready-to-use granular fertilizer protects nitrogen and boosts efficiency, visit kochag.ca. We've got more coming up with Peter W. Johnson right after this quick break.
Whether you're in a career within an organization, starting your own business, looking for your dream job, running your own farm operation, operating a company in ag or food, or want to hone your overall life skills, this conference is for you. Celebrating over 10 years of bringing women in ag together, join the Advancing Women Conference in Niagara Falls on November 17th, 18th, and 19th. Visit advancingwomenconference.ca for more information and to register.
I am Lindsay Smith. It is time for today's Product Spotlight with Mark Smith, CFO of Genesis Fertilizers. What are your focuses with this business?
We're raising equity from our investors and making quite crucial decisions about our engineering works and our licensing agreements.
What role will Pricewaterhouse play as the financial advisor?
So we've got a number of engagements with PwC. One of those is indeed to help us raise the capital for this project. And in accepting this appointment, they would have had a look at our plans and the credibility of our plans. So we're very pleased to appoint them for this support.
What will keep you busy in the next few weeks?
We're concluding our basis of design, so what the plant will make, negotiating our feed contract, and that's really the plan to build the house. So it's what will our chemical plant look like and making sure that that contract structure protects our investors.
And for those interested in learning more about Genesis Fertilizers and that plant, where can they go for more information?
So I think there's a very good entry page into the Genesis Fertilizers website.
And welcome back to Agronomic Monday here on RealAg Radio. Protect your anhydrous ammonia and bottom line, even if temperatures hit 15 degrees or below. That's not too late to apply agronomically effective, non-corrosive Centuro nitrogen stabilizer. Learn more at centuro.ca. After watching the Bears the last couple weeks, Pete, I think they could use a little bit of Centuro on that offensive line. That Caleb Williams. It has not been good. He has been running for his life. I think GM Ryan Poles needs to talk to Coke Ag about Centuro and maybe wrapping up the offensive line in it. That'd be good.
Yeah, well, yeah, I'm not sure Centuro would be the right product for that, but yeah, somebody better start giving the quarterback a little bit of protection, or it's not going to go the way they want it to go. That's for sure.
Yeah. Well, it's been rough for the Bears last couple weeks, indeed. Okay, let's talk fall weed control. It's that time of the year where we do some real serious work when it comes to fighting weeds. And, a lot of times we think about weed killing springtime, pre-seed, pre-plant, pre-emerge, in crop. But fall is where we get the work done. I don't care if you are farming in Western Canada, Central Canada, Eastern Canada, fall weed control is important. What are some of the considerations, Pete?
Yeah, so first off, Shaun, I really think you have to step back and say, what am I trying to control? And so, interestingly, Dave Hooker tweeted out a beautiful picture of a pigweed plant that had germinated 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks, 21 days it came up, and it was already setting seed. And so you kind of go, man, that's amazingly fast. But typically, when we're looking at fall weed control, most of the time it's not the annual weeds that we're targeting. What we really want to target are the perennials and the winter annuals. So things like wild carrot and dandelion and perennial sow thistle, and you name it. Like, it doesn't matter what jurisdiction I go to, there's always these perennial winter annual weeds that the problem with trying to control them in the spring, fleabane, for example, starts super early. Fleabane's a really interesting weed. In the heat of the summer, it changes its growth habit so that its optimum temperature for growth, I believe, is 21 degrees Celsius. In the fall, under cool temperatures, it changes so that its optimum temperature for growth, and don't quote me, Shaun, because I'm going off memory, but it gets down to something like 5 degrees Celsius for its optimum temperature for growth. And so these plants in the spring, they're doing the things that where we can't control them. The fleabane starts to bolt. Once it starts to bolt, it's almost impossible to kill. The perennial sow thistle, instead of putting its reserves or Canada thistle or dandelions or any of those weeds in the fall, they're translocating down. They're putting the reserves into the roots so they'll survive the winter. In the spring, now they're pumping everything up. I spray glyphosate and it needs to translocate. Well, it's not translocating into the roots because the movement is up. So I kill the top growth, but I don't kill the roots. In the fall, if I can apply in the fall, it translocates into the roots where all those buds are on those rhizomes. And so now I can kill the buds on the rhizomes and I get way better control. So you look at what are you trying to kill? And in the case of the pigweed from Dave Hooker, just spray it to prevent it from going to seed. But realistically, it's these perennials get that chemical down into the root. And if you do that, then you actually get much, much better control. The other consideration, though, Shaun, is a couple of other considerations. One is resistance, because fleabane, if all you spray is glyphosate, most of the fleabane, mare's tail in the U.S., it's resistant to glyphosate, so zero control. And even a lot of other weeds, things like alfalfa, you want to take out an alfalfa stand. You want to kill wild carrot. Glyphosate is not that good on those species, and it's rate sensitive, so you always start with the old 2 relative liters. We call it 2 rels, or of a 540 glyphosate, that's 1.34 liters per acre is the base rate. In the spring, we often talk, 0.67, 0.7 liters per acre. 1 liter per acre is pretty common. In the fall, you start with that 1.34 liter per acre rate of glyphosate because it takes more to get enough into that root system to really do the job. And then you look at what do I add to kill the weed that I'm after. There's a really great article that Mike Cobra put in the Grain Farmers of Ontario magazine in 2021. And so growers should go to that magazine or print that out and use that as a resource. For example, if you're trying to kill wild carrot, glyphosate alone won't do the job most of the time. But if you add Express SG, quite a cheap product, the thibenuron there.
Been around forever.
Right. Like exactly. But that will give you control of that wild carrot. So there's almost always something to add to the glyphosate to improve the level of control. And then, of course, the question about timing and temperatures. Do it when it's warm. Do it when the plants are actively growing. Do it when you have green leaf tissue. Once we start getting frost, you have to know if you get, if you kill the leaves, you get no uptake. And so, again, in that article, there's some really great tips. And you can use glyphosate as long as the temperature stays above -4 Celsius.
Okay.
Unless the weed actually is sensitive to the frost. So fleabane, again, a great example. The fleabane rosette, totally tolerant to -4. You can still spray glyphosate, and if it's not glyphosate tolerant, get control. If it bolts in the fall, it gets a seed head, well then it's no longer tolerant to that frost. And so the seed head dies. You can spray it till you're blue in the face. You get no control because the frost already killed all the leaves.
And kochia would be like pigweed, right? Same category?
Yeah, kochia's like pigweed. So spray it in the fall to prevent it from going to seed, but the approach is just a little bit different in terms of you just need the effective rate to take it out. You don't have to up the rate. You're not trying to get big root systems and kill them. It really is a difference in mindset, and it's a really better way to get control of perennials. And with the annuals, you just stop seed return. The less seed we get, I had a great conversation again when we were looking at that tar spot corn with an agronomist who said, you can tell the growers who always have good weed control because, man, they have no weeds to kill. Like they go spray a herbicide and it always looks like it does a good job because their population, their pressure is so low. You go to the next farmer, same herbicide program, and you're saying, why do I have so many weeds? It's all about how many weeds you've let return to that soil.
It's I've actually never thought of it that way. Like it would be like a stat, like your weed load per acre. Like,
yeah.
You know what I mean? So you increase the probability you have full control, the less weed load that you're trying to deal with in the first place.
Absolutely. 100%, man.
Is there a number? Like, is there something we actually call that instead of me saying weed load, if you know what I mean? Like the stocking density.
Yeah. We typically call it the weed seed bank, right?
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, but but the weed seed bank may be weeds that didn't emerge. I'm talking about the weeds that have emerged that we are attempting to deal with.
Yeah. And so that would be weed density.
Okay.
But weed density is highly related to the weed seed bank. Because you're right, not all the weed seeds germinate, but if I have 1 million seeds per square meter and I get, 10% of them emerge, that's 100,000 plants per square meter. If I only have 10,000 weed seeds per square meter and I get 10%, now I've got 1,000, right? 1,000, yeah. And so it's just like that. The level of weeds in the seed bank in your soil has a massive impact on how your herbicides work.
And the temperature thing, and especially on the prairies, because this is where we get real variable temperature. Like I'm in Lethbridge right now. You look at this week, we are 30 degrees Celsius on Wednesday. Okay. But we've got a low on Saturday of 3. I actually thought I saw a forecast we were getting down to 1. So we're in that period of the year where we're not quite freezing, but you got to pay attention, how many, where is that temperature for how long during the day? Like you said, if we do get like a -2, do we have to wait for a few more hours of warm temperatures in the height of that day? And then of course, like yesterday, the wind was bucking. So you're like, okay, now that's an added variable. So yeah.
When doesn't the wind buck in Lethbridge? That's
well,
what
Pete,
I want to know.
that's a whole another weather conversation.
Yeah.
Hey, before we take a break, we got an email from Mario from Quebec. What did he have to say?
Yeah, so Mario has reached out to me a few times for different questions, and this time his question was about lime and overliming and how that could impact. But the really super cool thing that Mario put in his email was that he has been listening to Wheat Pete's Word since episode 1, way back almost 10 years ago now, Shaun.
Wow.
And he said he was in college. He basically has never missed an episode, and very kind of him to say he believes it has made him a better farmer and better agrologist by listening to Wheat Pete's Word. So that it sends goosebumps up my spine or up my neck, I guess, Shaun. Like, it's just like, wow, to have that kind of positive impact. That's very, very cool.
Very nice of you, Mario. I appreciate that. That's a great email. Good stuff. I would make a joke about how Pete has led you astray, and be careful what you. But honestly, that's not a.
Well, actually,
he did a great job.
Shaun, Pete says that on the podcast. Like, this is what we think works in Ontario or in Alberta or wherever the research comes from. For goodness sakes, your results may vary. So take it for what it's worth and apply it. Yeah.
Bit of a disclaimer there for sure. Hey, the answer to above ground nitrogen loss problems is Anvil Nitrogen Stabilizer from Koch Agronomic Services. To learn how Anvil's dual active ingredients deliver extended protection, visit kochag.ca. Okay, maybe it wasn't Centuro that we need to wrap the Bears' offensive line in, it's Anvil.
Yeah.
That's what they need.
Yeah, they need something for sure.
They need a lot. Yes, a lot. Okay, we're going to take a break. We'll be back with more of Shaun Haney and Peter W. Johnson here on Agronomic Monday on RealAg Radio right after this quick break.
Calling all Montana, Dakotas, and northern Minnesota growers. Are you looking for a profitable addition to your farm that can deliver value beyond yield? The new seed omega-3 canola production system can help you unlock a guaranteed path to market with attractive premium opportunities and an active God clause. Contracts include first-in-class agronomy support and free on-farm pickup after harvest. Contracts are available now. Commit early to maximize your opportunity. To learn more, visit omega3canola.com.
Advanced canola trait technology is here. And it's soon to be the talk of the town. Optimum Glide delivers excellent yield potential and agronomic trait performance. Improved crop safety. Enhanced weed control. And a wider window of application. You're going to want to see this. Learn more at optimumglide.ca.
And welcome back to RealAg Radio. Hey, coming up here is the Prairie Oak Growers Association's AGM. It's happening December 4th at the exclusive Fairmont Banff Springs Hotel. Nice! Oak growers doing it up right. Visit POGA, that's poga.ca for more information and to register. Great meeting. Oats, obviously a very important crop to the Western Canadian prairies. So check out the AGM, and it sounds like a great opportunity close to Christmas to see the Fairmont Hotel in Banff at Christmas time, which is legit. They decorate it fantastic, and it's a pretty cool experience. Maybe a bit of a weekend getaway there with you and your spouse. So check that out, poga.ca. Shaun Haney here on RealAg Radio, joined by Peter Pete Johnson. Pete, we've got an email from South Africa. This audience is going far and wide. What Cobus? Is that how you say that?
Yes, Cobus, and I don't recall his last name, but it starts with it. And anyway, it doesn't matter. Really cool. And by the way, just on the oat growers, Shaun, Real Ag could send me to that meeting at the Banff Springs. I'd go on your behalf, Shaun.
Yeah, you're looking for a spousal getaway? Is that what you that intrigued you?
Oh, it's just a beautiful spot, man.
It is.
Especially at Christmas. It just, yeah, wow. Anyway,
I was at the Banff Springs in Victoria, the Empress, last week, and that was pretty cool. Like, those old CN rail hotels they're a national treasure.
They are, absolutely. Yeah. Hopefully they continue to be. So yes, Cobus from South Africa. And so Shaun, he has been watching a whole lot of wheat school videos.
As everyone should be. Like, of course.
If you're a wheat grower, man, that's where it's at. But it was really cool. And it goes back, we talked a little bit about the disclaimer at the end of the last session where Pete says an idea or somebody on a wheat school says an idea. Well, you really have to back up and say, does it apply under my environmental conditions? So Cobus, they used to grow, I better get it right, 5 ton per acre, which is about 75 bushel per acre wheat. It's not outstanding, but it depends on climate, depends on rainfall. He started watching the wheat school videos, and in particular, he sent me the email just saying that wow, a bunch of the stuff that we talk about on wheat school, they have started to employ over the last 5 years. So keep in mind, this is wheat school stuff that's primarily from Canada, right? Canadian research, Canadian information, takes it to South Africa, employs a bunch of it. This year, and it's wheat under irrigation, so they really have water. It's not like that's the big limiting issue. They've taken their wheat from 5 ton or 75 bushel per acre wheat to 7.3 ton or 108 bushel per acre wheat. Like, that's a massive increase. And this year, he says, from the looks of it and the added stuff they've employed, he thinks they're going to make 8 ton, which is 120 bushel per acre wheat. And you just say, like, wow, that's to go from 75 to 120 bushel per acre wheat. We haven't doubled his yield, but we've increased it by 50%. That is pretty big stuff. And cool how the agronomic principles we talk about here on wheat school or soy school or corn school or like whatever, right? Those are agronomic principles that work everywhere. It is just that you have to say, okay, my climate is hotter, my climate is cooler, my climate is wetter, and sort out how those apply. But the impact, Shaun, again, is pretty outstanding.
That is amazing. Like, I actually don't know how else to describe that, but that is fantastic. And again, appreciate the email and feedback on that.
Right. How would we know? And by the way, it keeps Wheat Pete young. It keeps Wheat Pete wanting to call Bern up and say, Bern, we need to talk about this because it's cool and it can help growers. And yeah, if we don't get that feedback, you kind of feel like you're living in a vacuum, and that doesn't work either, man. So very cool.
I think this question was coming out of Ontario. It had to do with broadcasting phos after wheat seeding in the fall. But I think this is a question, like the whole principle, I think we can apply it to the spring with spring wheat as well. If somebody wasn't able to get it into the drill, is this a good practice?
So Shaun, the question actually came because last week the weekend, as I mentioned, was gorgeous, right? We were combining soybeans. We were planting wheat. And the local agribusiness that was going to broadcast the phosphorus, the map ahead of wheat seeding, was too busy to get there. And the grower was going to do a light incorporation and drill the wheat. And he just said, like, do I wait? And the answer is, no, are you crazy? Get the wheat in the ground because seeding date matters. And it doesn't matter if it's spring wheat in the spring in Manitoba or Alberta, Saskatchewan, or it's winter wheat in the fall here in Quebec, in Ontario, in the Maritimes. The earlier you seed within the optimum window, the more yield potential you have. And does seed-placed phosphorus work? Absolutely. But you can't wait in this situation. Broadcast, it takes more to do a similar thing. You can never do quite as good as seed placed. I get that question lots. It takes 4 times the amount of broadcast phosphorus. 4 times the amount of broadcast fertilizer, phosphorus fertilizer, to give you about 80% of the yield gain you can get with seed placed.
This seems a lot more expensive, though.
And it is, but if it's about maintaining your soil test and not having the capacity on the drill to do seed placed, then you can, like, at some point you have to add the phosphorus. If ever you're going to add the phosphorus, it's for the wheat crop. That's the crop that gives you the most response to phosphorus. And so even though you say broadcasting 4 times is a lot, but then if you grow soybeans and you don't add any fertilizer, because we don't get much response to fertilizer on soybeans, they still take that phosphorus off. So it is a little bit about maintaining your soil test, but that's what it takes, broadcast. Regardless, you plant the wheat, and does broadcast phosphorus after help? And the answer is yes, it does. In Western Canada, if you broadcast and never get rain, you're going to be in trouble. But here with winter wheat, then absolutely broadcast, because the rains will move it a little bit into the soil, not much, but wheat and winter barley and winter rye, triticale, all of those crops have surface feeder roots, and they will benefit from that broadcast phosphorus. So get the wheat in the ground, broadcast later if you need to. That process still works.
If I've got manure in my plan and I've got a lot of phos levels are not my challenge when I do my soil test, do I even need to think about seed-placed phos at all?
So what's really interesting, Shaun, is that the wheat demand is so high for phosphorus that even on high phosphorus testing soils, we often see a uniformity boost. I've dealt with growers, I think about Don from Watford, and he's a hog farmer, had high soil tests, used lots of manure, and he did trials with me with seed-placed phosphorus. He would consistently get 3 bushel per acre yield gain, and his crop would be more uniform. But he said, Pete, 3 bushels, even though that's a yield gain, when I look at the cost of the fertilizer, the hassle of having to handle the fertilizer in the fall, that 3 bushel gain doesn't justify the cost and the hassle. So he didn't do it, but there was still that yield bump. And even, I think more importantly on wheat, that uniformity, so that when I try to do my T3 fungicide, I have a uniform crop to spray on it. And by the way, you also get better winter survival. So low rates, I'm not talking a lot, 50 pounds of MAP, right with the seed, 50 pounds of Mez, I don't care what product. That little bit of seed-placed phosphorus does make a difference, even on high testing soils, until you get too excessive. If you're excessive, then that's an environmental issue, and I think maybe you got to pull the plug.
I also wanted to ask you about, we never got to at all. We're going to do this like in the first segment. We didn't, with some of the soybean yield potentially that are out there. I've been hearing more and more from some agronomists in Manitoba that we could see a very good soybean yield, but it's going to be quite varied. But there's a fantastic yield out there in some parts, maybe even with some 6s in front of the number. And the same thing in Ontario. We're seeing some high potential bean fields there too.
Yeah, absolutely awesome. In the good areas, Shaun, some of the yields are blow the doors off. I've even heard one that started with an 8. So
8?
Yes, an 8. So that, like, wow. But what's really interesting is in some of the tougher areas, so down in the Niagara Peninsula, where it's heavy clay soil, they often go dry in August, and a typical crop is 1 ton per acre, which is 36, 37 bushels per acre. This year, there are growers that already have 1,000 acres harvested, and their average on 1,000 acres starts with a 6. They would normally be happy if it started with a 5,
wow,
and 4 is pretty common. This year it's starting with a 6. So a crop and a half, because they got rain all the way through the season. They have no white mold. because if you get lots of rain, then it actually is a negative to the sclerotia in the soil. So white mold, sclerotinia, same thing. So no white mold. Meanwhile, when I go to the areas that got pounded with rain, that just, we got the 6-inch downpours in an hour, there are some pretty disappointing yields in that particular part of those areas of Ontario. So it's not all roses and unicorns everywhere in Ontario. There are some areas where 40 bushel yield where you would expect 55, and 50 bushel yield where you would that's kind of a disappointment. So we have to be a little bit cognizant that not everybody's doing wonderfully, but there is some unbelievable yields out there for sure.
Yeah, and given what's happened to the market, more yields better.
Yeah. Isn't that always the way?
How's your marketing going?
Don't ask, Shaun.
Okay, we talk agronomics.
Yeah. I think I can help growers on economics. Or agronomics rather. I can actually help them on probably crop marketing too. If Pete sells, you do not.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just the way it works, man.
We've all been there for sure. Hey, Pete, can you hang around and talk about soil pH in the next segment real quick?
Yep, absolutely, man. Whatever works.
We're going to do that. But first, we were talking about phosphorus, right? Hey, experience the most efficient system for delivering sulfur and phosphate to meet your crop's needs with smart nutrition, MAP plus MST. We'll be right back on RealAg Radio right after this.
Make your neighbors envious with CDC NV CWRS. Introducing CDC NV CWRS, the latest wheat variety now available for Plant 25 from Alliance Seed. This semi-dwarf wheat delivers impressive yields, early maturity, outstanding standability, and a robust disease package. With CDC NV, your wheat crop will be the talk of the town. Learn more and find your nearest retailer at allianceseed.com or call 1-877-270-2890.
Peter Johnson at WheatPete, RealAgriculture.com. I'm the host of The Word, and I love doing The Word. I love the questions. I love the challenges. I love having to apply agronomics to all over the globe and areas outside of my normal jurisdiction. Also, I love the feedback the most, where growers challenge me, tell me about their plot results, help me to learn. The Word, absolutely the best part of my day.
Nitrogen fertilizer is your farm's number one expense. Farmers are working together through Genesis Fertilizers to solve the problem of high prices and security of supply by planning a state-of-the-art nitrogen plant. Security and earnings through ownership is the solution. Visit Genesis today at genesisfertilizers.com to learn more. I encourage you to check out that website. Looking, a farmer-owned facility, it would be pretty cool. So check that out, genesisfertilizers.com. Pete, tonight, The Agronomist, 8 o'clock Eastern, 6 o'clock Mountain. It's where Lindsay hosts The Agronomist. It's Real Ag in prime time. You can watch it on the Real Agriculture YouTube channel or at realagriculture.com/live, farming in Canada or the U.S. Tonight is a discussion that I think covers a pretty broad territory. We all think about soil pH. Some of us have soil pH issues that are too low. Sometimes the issue is too high. But there is, depending on what crops we're growing, it can have definitely an impact. Soil pH. Do we pay enough attention to it, Pete?
So what's really interesting, Shaun, to me is that oftentimes we do a general soil sample and it'll come back with a pH of 6.4. And if we don't actually pay attention and sample I've been in fields where the grower would say, like, what is the matter with that knoll? Oh. And you say, well, let's soil sample it. Yeah. And you pull the soil sample and it's a pH of 4.8. And you go like, wow.
Averages are dangerous. Averages are dangerous.
Absolutely. Yeah. Averages are more than dangerous. Yeah. I have a whole range of things to talk about that, but we won't go there. So the other really interesting thing is that with soil pH, you get a pH, but the soil type also matters. And so David, he's an agronomist in Kenya, and he just tweeted out a picture, I think yesterday or today, and he's talking about soil pH. The soil pH on a sand soil at a 5.2 and a soil pH on a clay soil of a 5.2, you'd say they're the same. But if you actually look at solution acidity, they're not, because the clay has better buffering capacity. And we don't talk about that much. But soil pH is not necessarily soil pH. The 5.2 clay is likely to grow better crops than the 5.2 sand just because of that. So, yeah, soil pH. And last but not least, high pH and the impact that high pH can have on some of the macronutrient availability. Like, it really does get into a bit of it, and hard to fix, man.
Yeah.
Like I have pH on my own farm as high as 8.4.
Whoa.
Yeah, you just go, man, what do you do with that? You just make sure you have enough fertilizer in the starter band, because that's about all you can do. And you make sure that the starter fertilizer is in a band, because in the band, that MAP fertilizer, the MES fertilizer, the whichever phosphorus source you pick, it will actually lower the pH and make that phosphorus more available, which is kind of cool.
And when we have pH issues, high or low, in our soil, it's not like our hot tub, right? With our hot tub, if the hot tub gets all out of whack, you just drain the water and you start over. With our soil, we can't just load up the topsoil and bring new stuff in. You got to fix it, right? And it's not simple. It's not easy as just draining the hot tub.
Yeah, well, at least your analogy is perfect. If I have low pH, then yeah, it's like adding a bunch of chlorine to the pool to kill the algae. I can bring in a bunch of lime and I can raise that pH, and it's cost effective. Some places I've been in Montana where the cost to do that is just horrendous because no local source. So I got to be careful. In Ontario, we can do that pretty easily because we're close to lime, but you get high pH. Man, it's almost impossible to bring that high pH down. Fortunately, mostly pH doesn't get so high that you can't grow a crop, whereas with low pH it does. But yeah, lots there to unravel tonight in the Agronomist, Shaun. I wish I could participate. Unfortunately, it is play rehearsal tonight, and Pete will be practicing on stage instead of. I will listen to the Agronomist tomorrow morning on the RealAg website, right?
Yep. We also podcast it. It's also on demand on YouTube. It lives there, and you can get CCACU credits for participating in the show as well, recorded or live. And listen to this roster tonight. You ready for this? We've got Dr. Alan Blaylock of Nutrien. We've got Miles Dick of the University of Alberta. And we've got Jeff Shano from University of Saskatchewan. How about that lineup of experts joining Lindsay?
That is a brain trust, Shaun. Those guys every one of those guys have forgotten more about soil fertility than I will ever know. So that'll be awesome. Be an awesome session tonight.
Yeah, I think this is a must to tune in. And I don't care if you're farming in Kansas to Saskatchewan to Lucan, Ontario. This is one for you to check out. So that's at realagriculture.com/live or on the Real Agriculture YouTube channel. Pete, we are out of time. Okay?
Hey, yeah, thanks so much, Shaun. It's been a blast. Have yourself a great week, man.
This has been fun. Make sure everybody you check out Pete's Word. New episode drops every single Wednesday where Pete answers your agronomic questions. And of course, Pete, a guest here every Wednesday on Agronomic Monday. If you have any feedback, we'd love to hear from you. Send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com, or call the RealAg feedback line, 855-776-6147. Thanks, everybody, for getting real and getting connected with RealAg Radio. We'll, of course, chat again tomorrow. Cheers, everybody.
Thank you for downloading this episode, brought to you by Brett Young. Check out their new BY7204LL canola with Pod Defender shatter tolerance and Defender rated club root protection. Talk to your local retailer today.